She almost stayed silent, and that silence could have killed him. The room felt calm, too calm. The kind of calm that makes people believe nothing can go wrong. Machines were steady, the lights were soft, conversations were low. The doctor had already made his decision, and no one questioned it. Why would they? He was experienced, confident, certain, and in a hospital, certainty is rarely challenged. But Ava didn't move. She stood there just for a second longer than everyone else. And that second changed everything. The patient's name was Ethan, late 40s, brought in after collapsing suddenly at home. No clear explanation, no visible injury, just a body that had stopped cooperating. Paramedics had done their part. Vitals were low, but stable. Breathing was present, pulse weak, but consistent. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent. The doctor reviewed the chart quickly, too quickly. "Start standard treatment," he said. No pause, no hesitation. Decision made. The team moved immediately. IV lines, monitors, medication preparation. Everything followed routine. Everything looked normal. Ava picked up the chart, glanced at it once, then again, then a third time. Nothing stood out. Everything matched. Everything supported the doctor's decision. So why didn't it feel right? She stepped closer to Ethan. His chest rose slowly, then fell, then rose again. But something about the rhythm felt off. Not dangerously wrong. Just not right. She leaned slightly, watched more carefully, listened. His breathing had a delay, a gap that shouldn't be there, small, almost invisible, but real. "Vitals are stable," another nurse said casually. Ava nodded, but her eyes didn't leave the patient. Stable didn't mean safe, and she knew that. She looked at his hands. Cold. Not freezing, but colder than expected. Her heart started beating faster. Not panic. Something else. Something deeper. That feeling. The one that doesn't show up in reports. The one that can't be measured. Instinct. She looked around. No one else noticed. No one else stopped. Everyone trusted the decision. And that's what scared her. She looked back at the chart. Slower this time. More carefully. Line by line. And then she saw it. A small detail. So small it could be ignored. So small it almost was. But Ava didn't ignore it. Her breath paused. Just for a second. This could change everything. She looked at Ethan again, then toward the doctor, already moving away. "Doctor," she called softly. No response. The room kept moving. Time kept passing. And Ava stood there, caught between silence and action. What if she was wrong? What if she questioned him for no reason? What if she embarrassed herself in front of everyone? But then another thought hit. Harder. What if she was right? That thought didn't let her stay still. She took a step forward. "Can we check this again?" she said, louder this time. The room slowed, just slightly. The doctor turned, a hint of irritation in his eyes. "It's already been checked," he said. Calm, confident, final. That should have been enough. For anyone else, it would have been. But Ava didn't move. Her hands felt cold now. Her heart beat louder, but her voice stayed steady. "Something doesn't match." Silence. A few heads turned. No one spoke. For a moment, it felt like she had crossed a line. The doctor walked back slowly, took the chart, looked at it again, quickly at first, then more carefully. Seconds passed, then more, and then his expression changed, not dramatically, just enough to understand. "Wait," he said quietly. Everything stopped, and just like that, the calm was gone. The moment the doctor said, "Wait," The entire room shifted, like time itself had paused just long enough to realize how close they had come to making a mistake. Ava didn't move, her eyes fixed on the patient as the doctor looked at the chart again, this time slower, deeper, connecting details he had overlooked just moments before, and then his expression changed in a way that said everything without a single word being spoken. "Stop the medication," he said sharply, and within seconds, the calm routine turned into controlled urgency. Nurses moving faster, machines being adjusted, attention snapping back to the patient, who suddenly didn't look as stable as he did before. Ava stepped closer again, her instincts now louder than ever, watching Ethan's breathing as it began to shift. No longer steady, no longer predictable, each breath carrying a slight struggle that hadn't been there before. And then it happened. His chest tightened, his rhythm broke, and the monitor reacted with a sharp sound that cut through the room like a warning they were seconds away from disaster. "He's dropping," someone said, but Ava was already there, her hands steady even as her heart raced, adjusting his position, watching every movement, every signal his body was giving, while the doctor stepped in beside her. No hesitation now, no doubt, just urgency. "We need to act now," he said, and the team responded instantly. The room filling with movement, voices, controlled chaos. But inside Ava's mind, everything slowed down again, focusing only on the patient in front of her, because she knew this was the moment that would decide everything. Seconds stretched longer than they should as Ethan's condition continued to slip, his breathing uneven, his pulse weakening. And for a brief second, the room felt like it was losing him, like everything was about to fall apart despite catching the mistake in time. "Stay with me," Ava whispered, her voice calm but firm, even though he couldn't hear her, her hands moving with precision, guided not just by training, but by something deeper, something that refused to let go. The monitor dipped again, a sound that made everyone freeze for half a second too long, and one of the staff members muttered quietly, "We're losing him." But Ava didn't step back, didn't hesitate, didn't allow that thought to take control because she had already made one decision tonight that changed everything, and she wasn't about to stop now. "Not yet," she said under her breath, leaning in closer, her focus sharper than ever. Every action now carrying weight, every second demanding more from her than before, and then slowly, almost too slowly to notice at first, something changed. The monitor flickered, the rhythm shifted, another second passed, then another. And suddenly, a steady beat returned, weak but there, fragile but real, and the entire room froze, not out of fear this time, but disbelief, because they all knew how close it had come, how easily this could have ended differently if she hadn't spoken up. Ava stepped back slightly, her breath finally catching up with her, but there was no relief yet, because this wasn't over, not completely, and as she looked at Ethan again, still fragile, still fighting, she realized something that no one else in that room fully understood yet. This wasn't just about one mistake. It was about everything that almost followed it, everything that almost slipped through unnoticed, and everything that could still go wrong if they let their guard down again. The room didn't return to normal. Not really, because once you come that close to losing someone, normal doesn't feel the same anymore. Ava stood quietly beside the bed, her eyes still locked on Ethan, as the steady rhythm of the monitor continued. Each beep now carrying a weight it didn't have before, like a reminder of how fragile everything truly was. The chaos had slowed, the voices had softened, but the tension hadn't disappeared. It had just settled into something deeper, something heavier. The doctor moved around the room, giving new instructions. This time slower, more precise, his earlier confidence replaced by careful awareness. And every now and then his eyes flicked toward Ava, not with irritation, but something closer to respect. But Ava wasn't thinking about that. She was still replaying the moment in her head, the hesitation, the doubt, the decision to speak, because she knew how easily it could have gone the other way. How easily she could have stayed silent like everyone else, trusted the process, and walked away. Ethan shifted slightly, a small movement, but enough to pull her back into the present, and she leaned closer again, watching him carefully, noticing the way his breathing was still not perfect, still fragile, like his body was holding on to stability by a thread. "You're still here," she whispered softly, almost to herself, and for the first time since all of this started, she allowed herself to feel something other than pressure, something quieter, something human. But that moment didn't last long. Across the room, another nurse called out, her voice cutting through the calm. "His levels are fluctuating again." And instantly the air tightened, the fragile sense of control slipping just enough to remind everyone that this fight wasn't over yet. Ava straightened, her focus snapping back, her instincts already rising again, and before anyone else could fully react, she was moving, stepping back into that space between action and outcome, where every second mattered. The doctor stepped in again, but this time, there was no distance between them, no hierarchy in that moment. Just two people focused on keeping one life from slipping away. "We stabilize him now. No delays," he said, and Ava nodded, already acting, her hands steady, her mind sharp, guiding the process with a calm that didn't come from confidence, but from clarity. The team moved around them, faster now, more connected, more aware, like the earlier mistake had sharpened everyone's senses. And as the seconds passed, the room once again balanced on that thin line between control and collapse. Ava could feel it, the pressure, the weight, the responsibility. But this time, it didn't freeze her. It pushed her forward, because she wasn't just reacting anymore. She was leading in her own way, trusting what she saw, what she felt, what she knew. Ethan's breathing stuttered again, and for a brief second, the fear returned, sharp and real, but Ava didn't let it take over. "Stay with me," she said again, her voice firm, grounded, like she was anchoring him to the moment itself, and then slowly. The pattern steadied once more. Not perfect, not strong, but enough. Enough to keep going, enough to hold on. The room exhaled quietly, the tension easing just slightly, but Ava didn't step back this time. She stayed right there, watching, waiting, knowing that this night wasn't just about one critical moment. It was about every moment that followed it, every second where things could still change. And as she stood there, she realized something that would stay with her long after this shift ended. Sometimes, saving a life isn't one decision, one action, one moment of courage. Sometimes, it's choosing again and again every second not to look away. The night refused to settle, as if the hospital itself understood that nothing about this situation was truly over yet. And Ava could feel it in every corner of the ICU, that lingering tension that never fully disappears after a near disaster, the kind that stays behind, even when the monitors stabilize and the staff tries to return to routine, because deep down, everyone knows that stability in a place like this is never permanent, especially not tonight, especially not after what had already happened. And as she stood beside Ethan, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, she couldn't accept the word stable the way others seemed ready to accept it, because to her eyes and instincts, there was still something wrong, something subtle but persistent. a hesitation in his breathing that broke the natural rhythm just enough to be noticed, just enough to feel unnatural. And it wasn't reflected clearly in the numbers on the monitor, which made it even more disturbing because Ava had learned through experience that the most dangerous problems in medicine are not the ones that announce themselves loudly, but the ones that hide behind almost normal readings, behind almost stable vitals, behind almost convincing recovery. And that contradiction between what the machine was showing and what her instincts were telling her kept pulling her attention back again and again until she couldn't ignore it anymore, as she reached for the chart once more and began going through it slowly, not out of routine but out of suspicion, scanning every medication entry, every timestamp, every adjustment note with increasing focus, as if she was trying to find something that didn't want to be found. Something that had already slipped past them once and was now trying to hide in plain sight, and for a brief moment everything seemed calm again, almost controlled, as if the worst had passed and the hospital had returned to its normal fragile balance. But then the monitor gave a faint, irregular sound, subtle enough that most people wouldn't have reacted. But Ava's head turned instantly because her instincts never ignored small changes, and in that exact moment, she saw it. Ethan's breathing pattern was shifting again, not dramatically but dangerously, like a slow slide back toward instability. And before anyone else could even process it, she stepped forward and said calmly but firmly, "Something's not right." A sentence that didn't create panic, but immediately changed the energy of the room, because everyone now knew what happens when she is certain. And within seconds, the doctor was beside her again, his earlier confidence replaced with full attention as he asked what she was seeing, and Ava replied without hesitation that the pattern wasn't holding, that it was dropping again slowly but consistently, and that was enough for the entire room to shift from observation to action, nurses moving with sharper coordination, machines being adjusted, orders being given in controlled urgency. Yet Ava remained fixed in place, because she knew this wasn't the end of it, not even close. And when Ethan's chest rose again only to stall halfway through the breath, that incomplete movement felt heavier than anything before it, because it represented not just weakness but the beginning of failure at a cellular level, the kind of breakdown that doesn't announce itself until it's almost too late. And in that moment, Ava felt the full weight of responsibility settle on her, not as fear, but as pressure that sharpened her focus. And she leaned in closer, speaking softly, yet firmly. "Stay with me." Not just to the patient, but to the process of life itself. As her hands moved instinctively to support, adjust, and stabilize every variable she could control, while the team around her responded quickly. But it was clear that the center of this moment had shifted onto her judgment, her awareness, her refusal to let go of what others might have already labeled as stable, and when the monitor flickered again and a nurse called out that he was dropping once more, the room tightened instantly, the calm dissolving into controlled urgency. But Ava didn't break, because she had already been here once tonight, and she understood that hesitation is what allows collapse to happen. So she said firmly that they don't wait, not loudly, but with absolute certainty. And the doctor nodded immediately, trusting her without resistance, as the entire team moved in sync again, faster and sharper this time, as if the earlier failure had taught them exactly how fragile this balance was. And those seconds stretched unbearably, each one heavier than the last, until finally something shifted. Not dramatically, not instantly, but enough to matter. The rhythm steadied slightly, the breath completed properly, the pattern returned in a fragile but real form. And although no one spoke of victory because they all knew better now, Ava stood there watching, still fully alert, knowing this was not the end, only